You're ready.
Welcome to Edmond. Glad all of you are here. It's always great to have a good group, and we're excited here because at least we have a room. I think the capacity was around 75 chairs in here. In Broken Arrow, we were in a science lab, and they were on stools. We had about 10 chairs across the back, and we had a whole horde of angry people who didn't get in the room. So this is actually a great setup, and we're pleased that all of you are here. I'm Janine Barnett. Lost my name tag somewhere on the trip. Hope I find it by tomorrow. I'm the Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and I have with me today Sharon Morgan, our new Director of Early Childhood. I'm thrilled to have her on board with us. She comes to us with 18 years of experience. She was a finalist for Teacher of the Year last year. So we know she's going to bring something that will be very beneficial here at the State Department of Education. In fact, she sent me an article this weekend, so she's already on the job working 24/7 like we do. We also have in the back Krista Knight, who is over our SPDIG grant, which is a special ed grant, and it's one that works specifically with the LETTERS program and early literacy, trying to get that early intervention to prevent over-identification of students. Because as you know, here in the state of Oklahoma, our identification of students for IDEA just continues to grow. And then we also have with us Carolyn Thompson. Glad she's here. This is her first time to hang out with us in RSA, where it's more fun than you could imagine. And then I think Timmy Stabler is locked out. And Timmy is, I'm telling you, Timmy is invaluable. She's been with the agency for several years now. Works as the Director of Instructional Materials, which is textbooks. As you know, there's no textbook money this year, so she's been dealing with all of that and creating plans for us to cope with that. She also is over library media, and she's going to also, as a former REACH coach, she'll be taking some leadership with RSA. So we're pleased to have her here as well. There's not a whole lot that's changed in RSA, so we'll go through the PowerPoint. It'll be available on the website on August the 8th. I've provided for you 3 handouts. One of them is a flyer for the Reading Summit on October the 28th. We're extremely excited to have Doug Fisher coming to Oklahoma. He's written, probably over 40 books. How many of you have heard of Doug Fisher? Yeah, he's a great author. His definition of text complexity is really embedded in our new standards, and so we wanted to bring him in so that people could get a deep understanding of that and how that works in the standards. It's free, being provided through the Office of School Support, which is federal dollars, because the Curriculum and Instruction Office is a state-funded office, so you know how much money I have. 0. So we're good friends with Special Ed, who thankfully has federal dollars, and the Office of School Support, and so they'll be bringing him in at Edmond on October 28th, so please mark your calendar. I've also provided for you the 3rd grade at-a-glance that Michelle Sprague put together, did a nice job on that, so you can kind of see some shifts and changes that are taking place in 3rd grade. And then the second page that you have, it's 1 page of the RSA Quick Guide. If you've looked at the Quick Guide online, you know that it's a 2-page document, and I hope you found that helpful. And it has been updated for 16-17, and it's on the web page. But we provided this 1 page of the Quick Guide because it has all of the good cause exemptions. We're not going to cover all those in the PowerPoint today. We're going to look at just some specifically, so that way you have access to all of those. And then on the back is the new testing blueprint for this next year. Because as you know, this next year we have new standards, we have new assessments, and then we also have a new definition of what meets RSA criteria or not. So that's what we're going to look at. But before we get started, I want to start with a look at the chart. And you know, here in Oklahoma, I'm from Oklahoma, love the state. I'm a 4th generation Oklahoman. My granddad came in a covered wagon in the 1900s. So I love this state. Love the children in the state. Feel that we have a moral imperative to take care of our kids. But as you know, in Oklahoma, we're usually down here on the chart, right? But this is pretty exciting. Our 4th grade reading NAEP scores this year, we had the 4th, they came out this year from the prior year. We had the 4th highest growth rate in the nation. Yeah, give yourselves a hand. That is the result of all of you in this room. That's not something, I've only been at the state agency for a year. Before that, I spent 21 years in Bristow. And I'm starting my 29th year as a teacher, which is unbelievable. But it's not anything I've done. This is the direct result of the collective effort across the state with all of you in your buildings, in your classrooms, working really hard with your students. Our 3rd grade reading scores, Desiree's locked out, let's let her in. Our 3rd grade reading scores over the last 3 years, and this last one for 16 is a preliminary, but for students who met RSA criteria in 14, or students who scored unsatisfactory and did not meet RSA criteria, in 2014 it was 16.2. In 2015, it was 14.6. And so preliminary data, and that's not final, and that's why it's not on a PowerPoint for permanency. I'm going to erase it so you can see it. But it looks like it's around 11.8 or 12%. But either way, you see the trajectory going in the right direction. And so again, give yourselves a round of applause. Phenomenal. You all aren't clapping like you would at the football field, but that's even more exciting. Even more exciting. So today we're going to do an overview of RSA. We're going to look at some of the data reports that we have to put together, talk about promotion considerations, retention considerations, and the planning for 16-17. The way that this is set up, it is a one-directional, I give a whole lot of information. It's not set up at tables. We do a lot of cooperative learning, and so you all are going to sit longer than you're supposed to. That's the way it's set up. But please, at any time, stop me if you have a question. How many of you have been teaching with the RSA and have been working with it for over 5 years? You should be going through this PowerPoint. You know probably more than I do. So if I represent something in a way that you think is inaccurate, please stop us so that we make sure that there's clear understanding. Because that's the absolute worst thing that you can do is leave here thinking that you have it one way, and then you go share that with all of your friends out in your buildings, and it actually was not quite. It's not exactly the way it should have been, and it's because I'm not communicating it effectively. So stop me at any time. How many of you are brand new to RSA? Welcome. Glad you're here. I first started working with RSA when I entered administration about 14 or so years ago. And I had never heard of it. And all I knew was there was this RSA money that we were going to lose if we didn't use it. The prior administration hadn't stayed on top of it like they should have. So I've worked with it over the years, but not as directly as most of you in this room. So I appreciate the work that you're doing, and we'll look at some of the issues and changes this year. So for an overview, I want to make sure everybody knows about our website. This is a phenomenal website. Again, it's not something I can take credit for. It was already created, but it's very well done, and we're working really, really hard. I know Timmy's been working to make sure that we keep it updated for you, and we have a whole lot of updated information already out there. But you notice on the website it's divided into 4 different categories. There's a link for legislation, and that's where you'll find House Bill 3218 with some of the new language that addresses RSA, and that's also where you'll find the new rules posted that go into effect August 25th. There's a parent section, and we have a parent brochure up. We are working right now to get it translated into Spanish, so it'll be available for you. And these are all updated for 16-17. The RSA Coordinator's Teachers is the best resource, of course, and I'll be showing you some of the different information that you have there. And then the research down at the bottom, one of the changes that we've made in Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 interventions is based on some of that research that's right there, and you can take a look at that. Have all of you been to our website? You've been using it? Excellent.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
If This summer I was looking for stuff about RTI, and when you go there, that is not so updated. Most of it's here under RSA. Is there a way that it can be in both sections? So if someone is like myself and thinking, well, I'm looking just for RTI information, what's updated there is the 2010 document, I think still from Proficiency or someone, which gives some good information, but I know that RSA has some additional things that were attached to it. So it's just a request that if it could be in both places in case a teacher doesn't link it to RSA, do you know what I mean? That
I do.
Because I have a little trouble, then I'm like, I know I've seen other stuff, where did I see that other
Is
stuff?
it
I
off of our
absolutely-
website?
It's off of, yes, it's the RTI, like if you go to A to Z and you go to RTI, the Tyr section, then
We
there's
will-
not, it's not so updated there
We
because
will
some
look
of
for
it's in
that.
here.
And if,
So-
and if any of you find additional links like that, please let us know. I don't know, our webpage has, what, Carolyn, like 7,000, I don't know,
Yes,
70,000
it has lots of-
pages. And we've been working really hard to try to clean those up, but there are things that we missed. Timmy had a phone call on Friday about the textbook adoption cycle. They didn't have the most recent one, and it's still out there somewhere when you Google for it, even though on our site we have the most recent update. So yes, we will check that.
I'm just thinking.
Anything else like that, please let us know. Yes, so that will be another resource for you. Anything else? Thank you, thanks for that. On the RSA coordinators and teachers page, there is a section that identifies for you what is approved for funding on the funding checklist. So you can access that there. If you're having trouble finding that, just let me know and we can access that before you leave here today. I do want to let you know that there is, it looks like a 30.57% decrease in RSA this year, but remember that the funding doesn't come out until every reading plan is turned in and all the students are identified. So even though it's a 30.57% decrease, it may be an additional amount if we have additional students because it'll be this, smaller pot spread thinner. On the data reports, the Summer Academy Reading Program we did have a report that was a part of that, but the red tape task force that's been put together by the state superintendent to identify duplication of effort and duplication of time required by districts uncovered that we are still requiring this report based on the time remember when there were two different funding streams, one for RSA and one for the Summer Reading Academy. That went away around 13 or 14, I think it was, and we still required the report. So this next year that report will no longer be required from you. Of course, the Summer Academy Reading Program is still an option for an intervention, but it is not a requirement. It has not been since it was not funded back in around, I think it was 13. Dates that you should remember are the K through 3 end of year report, which that one is already closed for you, but that's one of the main reports. The annual district reading plan, we've had several already that's been submitted, and that window will be open until August 31st. This is the one that everybody in the office, it's all hands on deck. We start reading those to get those pushed through because those all have to be approved for every school in the state before money is released, before we can send that up to state aid. So please don't be the site that I have to call and say, everybody in the state's waiting on their money because you haven't turned in your plan. I'm sure you won't do that. One of my good friends was that person this year. That was not a good phone call, and I called him, Colin, what's going on? So you'll notice that there are 4 reports here. There used to be 8 that were required, but through the red tape task force, they've now eliminated a lot of those or combined them so that you have 4 reports that are due. So you notice that we have up here the RSA criteria and the Oklahoma School Testing Program. That's the new acronym that we're using to refer to our testing program instead of OCCT. Okay, so in the past, you always were accustomed to seeing OCCT. So now when you see OSTP, just in your mind know that OSTP equals OCCT. Same thing, just a different acronym. So if you'll remember for 15 and 16 school year only, and for promotion purposes only, that we used for the first time this year, reading comprehension and vocabulary this past spring, those scores determined whether a student met RSA criteria or did not meet RSA criteria. Those 2 sections this past year, 15-16, were over Standard 2 and Standard 4, vocabulary, comprehension, critical literacy. This is the old blueprint. So when we got together and that change had taken place with legislature, we worked with OEQA, the Oklahoma Office of Educational Quality and Accountability, and the Office of Assessment And we decided that the best way to communicate that information would be to have the testing company identify the cut score for what would meet RSA criteria or not meet RSA criteria, and then report it to you with those two designations. So on the student's report, there's just a statement that says this student meets the RSA criteria based on Standard 2 and Standard 4 from the blueprint. The districts received a report and it had a column, meets RSA criteria or does not meet RSA criteria. Did that work for you all? Because I'm polling everyone. I've worked with Craig and I said, because next year a decision will have, this year, 16, 17, a decision will have to be made again. How do we report that back out to districts? And to me this seemed very simple, but I wanted to make sure and get feedback from everyone who's actually using it. So next year, do you want, or 16, 17, do you want it to be reported the same way?
Yes, I think it was good.
Anyone who found it problematic? Excellent. Then I'll report that back to Craig and we'll work on that. The blueprint that you have in your hand, it identifies, and you'll notice that there are some asterisks at the end of Standard 2 and Standard 4. That's telling you that those are the two sections that will be used to determine what meets RSA criteria or does not meet RSA criteria. And that's the reading and writing process. That's also where you'll find the reading foundational skills that are all part of RSA that are now embedded in the new standards and Standard 4 vocabulary. So we'll talk a bit more about that and what it means to meet and not meet RSA criteria. So when you have your promotion and retention conversations, you know that one of the first places you want to start are with one of the 13 screening instruments that's been approved by the State Board of Education. Here in the state of Oklahoma, the majority of our schools use Devil's Next, Literacy First, and STAR. Is there anyone in the room who uses something that's different than that? Yes, ma'am.
So uses AIMSweb.
AIMSweb, that one's another one that we've heard. Yes, ma'am. Easy CBM.
Both that and
Mm-hmm.
Norman uses DRA.
Which one?
DRA.
Really? You're the first one that said that. Not that that's negative, that's not a comment, that's just, that's interesting. So we know that they're all approved and they're all tools that have been deemed to be helpful in helping students, helping us assess students and see where they are with their reading ability. So for all students who are below grade level in reading, we're supposed to develop an APP, and we have on the web, and they're updated. Timmy's done a great job of that. We already have the academic progress plan for kindergarten, first and second grade, and third grade. There's 3 different forms because there's 3 different ways in the law that it reads a little bit differently on what you're required to report, and so they reflect that on each of those. They're in a Word document, so that you can open it, personalize it, use it as you want. It's there for you as your resource. Now remember, in the law, there are 2 different places that it talks about the Student Reading Proficiency Team, the SRPT. One of those places, it deals with first and second grader. And when any first or second grader is not reading on grade level, this SRPT develops a plan for individualized remediation. This particular team includes the parent, a current teacher, a future reading teacher, and a reading specialist if available. This is not the team that's to determine promotion or retention. This is to develop the plan. Okay? So we have a couple of different examples here, again, of a student reading proficiency team meeting and ways that you can keep track of that so that you document that. And this documentation is so important, and we'll address this again later, but we get a lot of phone calls at the agency with students who have moved from one district to another. And it's important to send the RSA documentation with that student because that really helps that other district know what to do with the student, know where they are, what kind of interventions have been planned, and what kind of meetings have already taken place. I've included this website in here because I know as a district superintendent, I didn't even know this website existed. and it's on our webpage. It's a wonderful resource on Lexiles. And as you know, the Lexile Level is one of the new requirements last year that we had to start reporting to parents. In the law, it says a conjoint measurement model, but the only one that I know about it is Lexiles. But anyway, I found out we have this, and we're paying thousands of dollars for it, and I didn't know about it. So if I didn't know about it, maybe you all didn't know about it. You can go in, and it actually has a place where you can cut and paste text and put it in there, and it'll give you a Lexile level on the text. It has lists of books with the Lexile levels, and we've been working with the vendor. Michelle Sprague has been working with the vendor to get some of the Oklahoma books listed on there. So it's a great resource, and it's just the sde.ok.gov/sde/Lexiles. Now remember, this has been in the law for some time, but I think last year was the first time that we had really talked about it. But any first, second, or third grade student who demonstrates proficiency in reading at the third grade level through a State Board of Education approved screening instrument shall not be subject to the retention guidelines. So you remember all of our 13, there they are. The 13 instruments. If a student at any time scores third grade proficient on one of these instruments, then they are not to be held to the retention requirements.
Another question about that.
Yes?
So let's say on fluency, they actually benchmark at the beginning of third grade, but they miss the benchmark at the end. They still satisfied it because they hit it at the beginning?
But remember that the benchmark that they need to be hitting is the end of third grade benchmark. But yes.
The way that
Now, if at any time they fall below that benchmark, once again, we're supposed to re-implement and reinstitute an APP. But yes.
I'm just thinking of the kid that misses it by 2 or 3 words,
Yes.
with 106 instead of 109.
Yes. But yes, if they at any time. Sure.
So this is a 3.9.
That score is determined by the vendors, and that's listed on our webpage. And if y'all want to look at that, we can take some time to go out and look at it. But thank you for asking that question, because we had Star, apparently one of the sales reps, and no blame on her. There's no blame involved in any of this, but she was communicating to districts that the beginning of the year third grade score was sufficient to demonstrate proficiency. But Renaissance had provided for us a scaled score of a 393, which is an end of year score. So, and it makes sense. I mean, when you research the law, in the section of the law that deals with this, it talks in 2 different places about end of year proficiency. And so that's the intent of the law, and that's, last year, we didn't go back to districts because some districts had been told that at the beginning of the year. We weren't aware they were being told that, and so instead of in December saying, oops, sorry, you've told those parents the kid, is proficient, now you have to take that back. We had a grace period last year, and we wanted to make sure that this year we will be communicating effectively so everyone knows for STAR it's a 393. And that is on the webpage. On the coordinator's webpage, where it identifies the 13 different screening tools. It gives a column of whether it has the Lexile level or not, and has some of the contact information available there.
Do you know if that's still, because there was also like the TR40 listed there for STAR, because that's what my school used. Do you know if that still is in conjunction, that scale score is still?
You want to take a look at the webpage?
Well, I don't want to take up your time. I
Okay.
can look
Well,
and see.
and
I know that's what it also said
I have
there.
it,
that's what we use,
and I
that's
have it
what
printed
says.
out. I have it printed out in my book. If you want to take a look at it before you leave here today, and we'll make sure. I believe that it is,
Okay.
but I don't want to commit. I know it is for some of the others, and I can't remember for STAR, so we'll look and make sure. Any other questions? Excellent. Once a student has achieved third grade proficiency, again, we have a sample letter on the website that you can use. In the other room, they're just seeing my arm. That's probably weird. I'm going to stand over here. I just saw that. But a question came up, I believe, in Sallisaw, and they said, well, when a student achieves proficiency, are we required to send a notification out to parents immediately? No, it doesn't address when that notification goes out to parents, so you can wait and do that at the end of the school year. Remember, there are multiple paths to promotion. This law was not intended for us to have 13-year-old kids in third grade, and I had a call from the district where that was going to be the case. So let common sense prevail. Make sure we try to do what's best for kids. But we do have multiple paths for promotion. So when you're looking at a student who it may be questionable, once we start getting the score results back sooner, you would be able to look at the score results, and then you're saying, do I go with what the OSTP says, or do we need to look at something else? Here's 4 different options of things that you could look at. The first one, of course, is to look at the State Board of Education screening instruments, because that's the most straightforward. But remember, for 16-17 school year only, in the past, it used to say a student who scores unsatisfactory. This year, for 16-17, it's unsatisfactory or limited knowledge. And I am putting in school year only because we are in a pause year and an interesting year, kind of an in-between year with our assessments. So, and we never know what happens with legislation. So this next year, the Measured Progress, our vendor for testing, will be looking at setting the cut score for limited knowledge, not for unsatisfactory. Okay, just want to make sure that that's clear. So if a student does not meet RSA criteria, and that's what you'll see on your test results, not an unsatisfactory or limited knowledge based on these 2 portions, you'll see a meets or does not meet. So if a student does not meet RSA criteria, then you may look at another potential path for promotion if you think that's best for a student. And look and see if they've met the benchmark on one of the 13 screening instruments, or give them that benchmark again and give them the opportunity to meet on that. Any questions about that? The second promotion path option, and you'll find this one in our rules that are posted on the webpage. Again, it's unsatisfactory or limited knowledge. So if a student is not eligible for automatic promotion, you may also want to look at what it says in our rules, is that a student could score at the 45th percentile on one of the 4 approved alternative standardized reading assessments. This is good cause number 3, good cause exemption number 3 if you look on the handout that you have. This does say 45th percentile. You asked about 40th percentile earlier. This 45th percentile is on these 4 tests. SAT 10, 10th edition, ITBS reading comprehension, ITBS core battery reading comprehension, or the Terra Nova. Okay? And again, if you're looking for that information, that's referenced in the rules, not in the law. Another avenue through the promotion path 2 is through a good cause exemption. Again, a student is not eligible for automatic promotion if they score unsatisfactory or limited knowledge, unless he or she accumulates evidence of 3rd grade proficiency through a student portfolio. And again, what's required in the student portfolio is listed in the rules. And you need 4 pieces that are tied to each of the 5 areas of the requirements in the Reading Sufficiency Act: your phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary. Or is subject to other good cause exemptions. Promotion path 2. Questions about that? We have some examples of the portfolio checklist on the webpage again, and that will have the requirements that are listed in there if you'd like to use it in Word so that you can personalize them. Promotion path option number 3 is that a student who is not eligible for automatic promotion unless he or she completes the Summer Academy Reading Program. How many of you went ahead and had summer programs this summer? Bless you. I think that's awesome. And I know one year in 2009 we had to cut our reading program in the summer because of funding at that time, and that just broke my heart because our district, we had 75% of the kids on free reduced lunches. We knew they were getting breakfast and lunch in the summertime in our summer programs. I know it's been really tough, and districts have made some tough decisions. But a student who successfully completes the Summer Academy Reading Program by demonstrating, so it's not just going to the summer program, they have to also demonstrate competency either through a student portfolio or scoring proficient on an alternative reading assessment. This is found again as one of the good cause exemptions. The promotion path 4, if a student is not eligible for automatic promotion, is to go through the student reading proficiency team. This is the second time that's mentioned in law. It looks exactly the same, but this is the one that's for third grade promotion and retention decisions. And on this particular team, you must have, it must be approved by the school principal and the school district superintendent, and you must have a parent or guardian, a teacher who taught reading, a teacher who teaches fourth grade reading, and you must have a reading specialist. I know in some of our smaller districts that's been a challenge, but apparently there are some reading specialists who have been contracting so that they can work with those districts. The decision for probationary promotion must be unanimous from all of these people on the team. It has to be a unanimous decision. So when you get ready to have your conversations with parents about third grade retention, of course you want to document it and keep track of it. You can do that through multiple paths. I know sometimes with our parents we can't get them into the school building. That would be the best, to have a face-to-face conversation with a parent. That is the best option. But it may also take place through email or by phone. And that discussion about retention really needs to take place prior to the spring semester. Now I know next year we have, in 16-17, we have new standards, new assessments, and the new RSA definitions of what meets criteria or does not meet criteria. Have any of you received the email from Superintendent Hoffmeister asking for input about the testing window for this coming year? Excellent. And I know that we've tried to send that out through our reading listserv on Friday so we could maybe reach some more people. So I wish that every hand in this room went up, and we definitely want your input. Now realistically though, if you'll see in all of those options, even though third grade reading is the first test that's always the option to be given first, we still won't be getting the results, Carolyn, I think until June, regardless. So most of you will probably be out of school. So realize and understand that as you're benchmarking, as you're using your progress monitoring, and as you prepare to have conversations with parents. Now is that an ideal situation? Absolutely not. But as you all know, as seasoned educators, the standards have to go through a standard setting process. And there will be teams of people who come in to look at that, and they'll work with OEQA to get that done.
So we won't have the preliminary one like we did the last 2 years?
There will be no preliminary results this year. I know. We'll all groan together. It's one of those things that we wish we could fix that, but there's just absolutely no way. It's just the nature of the beast for this year. Yes, ma'am.
Is actually, we won't know if they're promoted or they're held back until the next school year.
It'll be in June, but what I'm saying is that it's very important for you to be having your benchmarking and your screening instrument so you can predict and have those conversations with parents. Because remember there's
You have to predict, but, I mean.
Remember there's 4 paths to promotion. One of those that I didn't even put up there is the the OSTP performance. That's a 5th path. But there's actually 4 other paths.
So, when school gets out in May, ours gets out in May, I've got to predict whether they're promoted or out of town.
That would be the best conversation to have.
Yes.
And you can prepare them.
So you would just say at this point in time, once they pass that test, I mean, that they haven't met.
You should be able to make a
Could you say that again more loudly so everyone could hear you?
Yeah, I just said that you would just have to say, our screening results, if they do not pass, they do not qualify for any other exemption. So if they do not pass this test, then they will retain.
There's a high likelihood.
They did that a few years ago with my nephew, that he ended up passing the test, but they said, if it comes down to the fact that he doesn't pass, we can't prove that he is ready to move on otherwise. And they sent a letter to my sister at the end of the year telling me that.
And I'm not suggesting that's an easy thing to do. We did that as a district once before, and I can't remember what year that was that we didn't get our score results back in time. But there, and the important thing is that you're having those ongoing conversations with your parents so that there is no surprise. I mean, because even when the score results come back, when you talk to parents, that shouldn't be their first time to say, oh, we get calls all the time. The district didn't tell us at all, and now it's August, so they say my kid's going to be retained, and I've never heard from them. Of course, we know to take that with a grain of salt. Sometimes parents don't paint the most accurate picture. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But yes, those ongoing conversations are very important.
1 year?
This is a 1-year thing, we think, but it depends whether assessments change, you know.
But
But
it'll take out the reading academy, the summer reading academy, divide out of that to, insist that they show up. You don't know who you're insisting necessarily.
yes, ma'am.
I'm not a seasoned teacher, so the progress monitoring for this year, is that going to be that Bountis and Pinnell or STAR?
The STAR is the one that is approved by this as a screening instrument, and if you're required to assess a student at the beginning and end of school year with that tool.
Okay.
The Bountis and Pinnell may be something your district is using for ongoing
it's a
progress
district
monitoring
thing.
in between.
Okay.
And there's a very strong correlation between those benchmarks on the screening assessments. So you kind of have, by the correlation of what they make at benchmark, you can predict with a fair certain, not a 100% certainty, of how well they're gonna do on the state
The only
assessment.
problem I run into with that is you've got those kids that are slow and right, and they may not ever meet that fluency benchmark, which automatically puts them on the plan, that they get it and they do great on the test. That happens a lot. It doesn't matter how much intervention you do, they're just gonna be off by 5 or 10 words and then.
And that's where you, as knowing that child and how they do, can better predict.
To use the screener as a pathway to proficiency, does it have to be given just during the benchmarking period?
The question was, for the screener to be used as a benchmark proficiency, does it have to be given during the beginning of year or end of year testing window? And the answer is no. It's at any time.
So if they happen to score in that area that's not in your benchmarking period, it can still be counted.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Excellent. You know that we have the 8 elements of what you are required to report to your parents. They are listed on the other page of the quick guide, if you had it on the back. And the quick guide, again, is on your RSA coordinator link. It's at the very top of that page. So I'll tell you that quick guide is what I keep, and as I get phone calls, I pull it out and refer to it all the time. And Kimmy's done an excellent job of updating it, so it's updated for 16-17. So strategies listed in the law that to be used to retain third graders include but are not limited to small group instruction, reduced teacher-student ratio, more frequent progress monitoring, tutoring or mentoring, transition classes, extended school day, week, or year, and summer reading academies if available. So as you're planning for next year, know the changes that are in rules. Some of these are just things to help us catch up with the law. So it's already been in law for a year, but the rules going into effect on August 25th are going to catch up. And one of the big changes is that students who score below the proficient level, so it's students who score limited knowledge or unsatisfactory, will not meet RSA criteria. And you notice that they've crossed out criterion reference test because we're not referring to it as a OCCT anymore. Some of the questions that have come in have talked about the transition from RSA to ACE. And I was so excited because we did some research and found and talked with legal, and we found that RSA and ACE legislations dovetailed very nicely. Well, guess what? Is it at the end of May? At the end of May, all of the ACE legislation was repealed. But there's a piece in the RSA law, it's there in House Bill 3218, that says, still lists the ACE information. So this is what has been provided to us from legal. I know you can read it, but I'm going to read it with you just because I want to make sure I represent it accurately from our legal team. Even though House Bill 3218 both repealed ACE and further amended the RSA statute, it did not remove the language that provides that students approved for probationary promotions must have their reading proficiency reviewed by their probationary promotion team every year until they read on grade level or transition to the requirements set forth by the Achieving Classroom Excellence Act. So this is a decision that affects those kids who still are not reading at grade level and are moving into middle school. So the 2016 RSA rule amendments that were approved by the state board and the governor go into effect August 25th and provide for transition to ACE remediation for students approved for probationary promotion who do not read on grade level by the time they enter middle school. This opinion and information has gone out on the reading listserv. So if you've not received that, it may mean that you're not on our listserv. Please let us know if you'd like to make sure you receive it. I think it went out Friday afternoon, so it may be waiting in your inbox. So, although ACE itself was repealed as of July 1st, we advise that for the 16-17 school year, schools may provide secondary students the reading remediation required by the RSA through an ACE remediation plan, any ACE remediation plans already in place for such students. Although the Achieving Classroom Excellence Act is no longer in effect, this approach will allow districts to provide students with the reading remediation they're entitled to without being required to develop new remediation plans with so little time left before the school year begins. Ultimately, what that means, in every district with ACE, you were given freedom on what kind of remediation you provided, okay? So middle school ACE remediation was a district-determined approach and plan. And so what that means is the APP requirements, the beginning and end of year benchmarking requirements, all of those requirements that were under RSA, they don't automatically transfer up to the middle school. It will be whatever your middle school was already doing to identify and provide remediation for students. And if I'm not mistaken, in ACE, I believe it was said that we have to offer it instead of required. Clear as mud? So those you have to kind of think about. And so if you call, and like I had a person in Stillwater, and she said, well, Dr. Barnett, can we have a reading class that's just for students who've been identified? And the answer is yes. I mean, if that's what your district decides, that's what you can do. And so it's really any kind of plan that your district has is what you can do. Okay? This is just a slide from legal team telling us that the rules aren't in effect until they're really in effect, and yada yada. Remember that SARP is no longer required, so that's another rule change that's coming. We've already talked about that. Other rule changes that are in place to reflect what was already in law is they're changing what's in the student portfolio, because we used to include phonological awareness and spelling and writing, and now it's just the 5 elements from the Reading Sufficiency Plan. Good cause exceptions 5 and 6 now have pre-kindergarten for academic reasons, and then the biggest change is the Tier 2 intensity and frequency are used as variables instead of a constant. So what does that mean? You know, my first year in administration, I went on 1 blood pressure pill. Dries my mouth out. My first year as superintendent, I went on 2 blood pressure pills. So I now, deal with that, and I get a dry mouth. And we will get to that. We'll talk about the Tier 2 intensity and frequency. Other changes, it talks about that student reading proficiency team that we've already discussed. And then we have evidence-based strategies that are there on our webpage underneath the section off on the sidebar under interventions. It lists them by the 5 different components, and it has specific areas for Tier 2 and Tier 3. So what does it mean by the change in intensity and frequency becomes a variable instead of a constant? Well, we know that research very clearly tells us that Tier 1 intervention needs to be that 90-minute block of reading, because that's what makes it most effective for students. And to help students really grow, especially those who come to us with a 30 million word gap and language delayed, they need that exposure. As you looked at the research, though, for Tier 2, the intent of Tier 2 was for it to be something that was responsive to a student's identified skill need on a frequent basis. And so we should be doing progress monitoring on a weekly basis or every couple of weeks. Your district determines that. And then based on that progress monitoring, a student will move in and out of different groups, if you will, or one-on-one instruction focusing on a specific skill. And so when you look at the research, it identifies that this should be variable depending on the student's need. Not a constant time, because a kid may not need 25 minutes 5 days a week. They may start out needing 25 minutes 5 days a week, but eventually you hope that they move and they've grown in that skill level and they move into, they may only need remediation 5 minutes a day for that fluency, or 10 minutes a day, or 10 minutes every 3 days. As the teacher, you're the one who best determines that. And then the tier 3 is the 90-minute block of course, plus at least 45 to 60 minutes, and that again reflects the research that's there with RTI. So what does that look like for tier 2? Of course, you want to choose an evidence-based, systematic, and explicit intervention that helps students. And as you begin your interventions, you want to begin with more time and decrease time as the student responds. Now, a student may not respond, but if you have to really ask yourself, if they're not responding and they're not moving, they're in tier 2, then you may want to reevaluate, and they may really be a tier 3 student. And then how often, begin with daily, and then decrease the sessions according to how the student responds. Questions about that?
On the slide, it still talks about 90 minutes.
The 90-minute is,
So is that like what you start at for a week and then you can decrease from there?
the
Or is that
90-minute is tier 1.
Okay, so then you
It's
kind of set your own time frame.
The 90-minute is a given.
Okay, because I was just looking from the top, I didn't know if that's what that was at the very top in tier 2.
Tier 2 is 90 minutes daily plus intensity and frequency adjusted and target
Okay, so it
student
doesn't
need.
give us a specific number anymore, so we kind of get to decide that. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying.
No, that's a good question. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Working in the fifth, sixth grade, what is required in the portfolio for kids who didn't need it or still needing intervention? What's required?
It's four pieces of work per each section within the reading sufficiency
So
law.
that continues into fifth, sixth?
It continues until the student reaches middle school. And once they
Our
reach,
fifth and sixth is actually part of our middle school.
okay. Then once they reach middle school, they fall under the requirements that your district had adopted for ACE remediation.
So if there's no portfolio actually needed once they reach middle school?
Right. That'll be a district determination. Okay.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions? Awesome. I'm going to turn this over to Krista Knight.
My name is Krista Knight again. I'm with the State Personnel Development Grant. Some of you guys have probably heard about it, but it's under special education because it's a grant from the Office of Special Education Programs. So it's a federal grant. However, we work with schools in setting up a multi-tiered system of support, this tiered system for, of course, for all students. So although we're special education or funded through special education, the support we provide and the documents and guidance and trainings really for all students. So I wanted just to mention today that we have a website, otis.net, and the comment earlier about the RTI information, several years, and I know I've talked for a long time on this, so I'll try to make this quick, but several years ago, we had an RTI initiative at the State Department where we were developing guidance documents, support to schools, and implementing response to intervention. And we also had a program for positive behavior intervention and supports where we looking at behavior. When we wrote this grant that in 2011, we wrote the most current SPDIG grant. And through that process, we combined behavior and academics because we know we can't separate those two. And so we've developed otis.net, which is basically Oklahoma Tiered Intervention System of Support, MTSS, so your multi-tiered system of support model for both academics and behavior. And we've developed new resources and things like that. So we probably just need to take those old documents off, find where they're at, and take those off. And so I have some postcards if you're interested in knowing more about this. This is a grant, so the training and everything we provide is free. And what we do is we work with schools to do a self-assessment to look at how well we're providing these interventions already or how well the site is, and then help you develop a plan for improving the tiered system. So I have these postcards with me, and I have my cards with me also. first thing I'd suggest is that you get with me so I can get your name put on our listserv so that when we do provide these trainings and stuff, I can let you know when you can attend if you're interested. So if you have any more questions or anything, just get with me and I'd be happy to share more information.
One last time, the OTISS stands for what, Oklahoma?
It's Oklahoma
Tiered, okay.
Intervention System of Support.
And her grant, if you've been to any letters training, her grant has paid for that. Cause that's $3,000 a day for the instructor, I believe, just to have those people come in. And so she's been tremendous help to the Department of Instruction, or the Office of Instruction.
And that's one of our goals, is to try to have cross-functional teams so that we have money that doesn't necessarily follow a department, but follows the needs of our students in the state. And so that's why you'll hear us talking about, we have a great relationship and meet on a regular basis with the Office of School Support. We do the same for the Office of Special Ed and the Office of Assessment. Because what we want to do is to provide the best services possible, the best answers for you all, so that you can best help our kids in the state of Oklahoma. Of course, here's that question that we spent some time on earlier, district responsibilities or forecast prior plans. I know that's not easy, but that, especially this next year, is going to be important as we wait for the cut scores to be set on the tests. And the other thing that I would ask is that when you put in the CUME file a lot of your information on your RSA progress with the student, so that when that student moves to another school district, they don't have to start all over again. Information available for them. Here's the list of our team. We've tried to put together a good team so we can get those reading plans all read and approved so that all of you can then get your money. My goal is always to try to get it to you by November. This year it was December, unfortunately, but we'll keep working to try to get that out early if the money is available, which we know it's a tough year. We don't know where that will go. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, when kids move, fourth grade, make a call and verify with their previous school if they passed or didn't pass. If they didn't pass, do we request, or do we ask if there's a portfolio, how do we determine exemptions? Do we ask them to send a copy of the portfolio, do we take their word that how do we do that?
The question was, if a student does not meet RSA criteria and they transfer into your school in fourth grade, what should you do? I would call and ask for that documentation. And again, it shouldn't be pages and pages, but if it's a portfolio or if it was a benchmark screening or
But they just send us the sheet that they don't have to send us the actual
documentation, right? Just where they've signed and said, yes, this person, the student has met the criteria. And again, I would just encourage you to make as a part of your process at your school that those RSA documents are sent when a student's CUME folder is sent. Any other questions?
Can you discuss a little bit more of that documentation for fourth and fifth grade students?
If your fourth and fifth grade students are in an elementary school, the documentation stays the same as what you have for your third grade students.
So we do APPs for them or just the limited knowledge?
It's if they did not meet RSA criteria, and if they did not meet one of those other 4 paths that we talked about for promotion, and may have gone through a probationary promotion period, then that's when you would continue to keep that documentation for them.
Okay, just to clarify, it's only the ones that are on probationary promotion. It's not. Okay.
So in the past, we've got portfolios on kids who stored limited knowledge.
We need, that's one of those things that we need to work on, and I'm working on it myself. Don't think limited knowledge unsatisfactory. Let's just think meets and does not meet criteria. Yes, ma'am.
The kids from third grade last year that were promoted for limited knowledge, what if they scored limited knowledge again this year in fourth grade? Do they have to continue?
Again, let's don't think about things as limited knowledge. Let's think about it as meets or does not meet. So if they met RSA criteria, they're home free. Of course, you
So
still
they met it when they were in third grade because the requirement was
meets.
Okay.
Yep. Now, of course, you still want to do what's best for kids. And if they have deficiencies, work on that with them. Any other questions? Excellent. If you have any others, feel free to call any of us, email us. We'll be happy to talk to you. I'm not
At 11. I'm gonna do this.
Oh, okay, well, I'm not doing that one. Okay, I'll see you later.
Where are you? I'm back in here. Are you guys staying in here? Here, maybe stay in here. We don't want you. Right back. Are you guys staying here? That I'm gonna set my stuff, my purse and stuff.